Welcome to Soulful Love Chronicles, where every story unravels a secret. So, let's dive into another story. My epilepsy, a cruel hand dealt by genetics, was a shadow I'd lived with my entire life. Its roots ran deep, twined through my family tree. Then came Alara, a researcher specializing in my condition, a woman my husband Arthur had always admired. A little too much, perhaps. Recently, Alara's team had trumpeted a breakthrough drug, a supposed miracle cure. They wanted a test subject, and their eyes landed on me. Absolutely not, I'd stated, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. But Arthur, blinded by his adoration for Alara, decided my consent was a mere formality. He secretly swapped my daily medication with their experimental concoction. The consequences were swift and brutal. Severe complications, including a swelling in my brain that sent me hurtling into the ER. Arthur, a neurosurgeon by profession, stood by my bedside, a stranger cloaked in my husband's skin. "Honey," I rasped, each word a battle against the searing pain and dizzying fog. "You won't operate on me?" He just stared, his gaze vacant. "Alara should handle this. She needs one more case study to complete her research paper. 9 years of marriage, a tapestry woven with shared dreams and public smiles, unraveled in that sterile room. We were the perfect couple, or so everyone believed. But in Arthur's eyes, I was merely a means to an end, a stepping stone for his beloved goddess, Alara, to ascend. He had not only endangered my life by tampering with my medication but now insisted that Alara, a woman with minimal clinical experience, perform a life-or-death surgery on me. Was he mad? Had the whole world descended into a special kind of madness? Tears silently traced paths into my hair, the crushing weight of death pressing down. Thankfully, pressure from other hospital administrators forced Arthur's hand. He conceded to the surgery, but with a chilling condition. I had to be under general anesthesia. In the operating room, Arthur's eyes, once filled with a semblance of love, now held only contempt as he looked down at me under the stark surgical lights. As the anesthesia took hold, I saw a graceful figure replace Arthur at the operating table, and his adoring gaze never left her. Just before darkness swallowed me whole, Alara leaned close to my ear, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "Don't worry, Isabel. While I may not have Arthur's clinical experience, my theoretical knowledge is quite extensive." Then, Arthur's voice, thick with devotion, echoed through the fading consciousness. "Don't sell yourself short, Alara. You're the most exceptional talent in the entire medical field." Time stretched, a distorted nightmare filled with hushed whispers and urgent voices. Someone pried open my eyelids, checking my pupils. "Dr. Vance, Dr. Thorne's incision was completely off. If you don't take over as lead surgeon, we'll have to report you for unauthorized practice." Before Arthur could respond, a shrill cry pierced the air. "Oh no, the patient's vitals are crashing. Dr. Vance, that's your wife on the table. Are you going to stand there and watch her die?" Arthur remained unmoved, his gaze locked with a pale-faced Alara. "Don't worry, Alara. I'll guide you. You can do it." He stood frozen, offering only verbal instructions. With the situation critical, the other staff abandoned their arguments, focusing solely on saving my life. I awoke in the ICU, piecing together fragments of overheard conversations. The surgery had lasted 9 grueling hours, no wonder the delayed recovery. Yet, barely 2 hours after the botched operation, another brain hemorrhage seized me. Monitors shrieked, and chaotic footsteps rushed to my room. "Where's Arthur? The patient isn't out of danger yet. Where the hell did he go? Didn't they just say the surgery was successful? How did the patient end up with a brain hemorrhage? What kind of botched operation was this?" I recognized the furious voice of Director Hayes. The resident doctor beside him, pacing anxiously, stammered. "Right after surgery, Dr. Vance left with Dr. Thorne, saying she needed to record some urgent data." "Alara? What's Alara got to do with this?" Hayes's anger flared. The resident trembled. "Dr. Vance said the surgery data was crucial for Dr. Thorne's research, so he let her." "What?" Hayes was thunderstruck. But my condition was too critical for further discussion. Everything blurred. 2 hours later, I was back in surgery. This time, the voice from the operating table was both familiar and strangely calming. "Don't worry, you'll be fine." I slipped back into anesthesia, this time with a faint glimmer of peace. When I next awoke, being wheeled out of the operating room, that reassuring figure was gone. Instead, Arthur's irritated face loomed over me. "You kept blowing up my phone like crazy. I thought you were dying and needed me to sign your death certificate." His voice boomed, making my ears ring. Nurses in the hallway stopped. One pushing my bed spoke angrily. "Dr. Vance, of course we had to contact the surgeon when complications arose, but you wouldn't even pick up your phone. Ms. Brooks nearly died from a brain hemorrhage, and you have the nerve to say something like that? She's your wife. Arthur shot the nurse a contemptuous look. What would a nurse know about any of this? Ever heard of the boy who cried wolf? That's exactly what she's like. He rolled his eyes. Heaven must be blind to let you survive this one. With those chilling words, he walked away without a backward glance. During my grueling days in the ICU, Arthur never appeared. Only the dedicated nurses, specifically requested by someone to care for me, were familiar faces. Foolishly, I'd initially thought Arthur was behind it. Dr. Vance took leave the day you were admitted to ICU. Said Dr. Thorne's research project was taking a toll, and they needed a getaway. Haven't seen him at the hospital since. A doctor skipping work for weeks, all to accompany another woman. The young nurse fell silent, seeing my expression darken. In the ICU, only my breathing and the hum of machines filled the air as I stared blankly at the ceiling, feeling like the biggest fool alive. My parents' divorce had left me a hot potato, tossed back and forth, given just enough to survive, nothing more. Then I met Arthur, fell in love, married him, believing he'd be by my side forever. But life had other plans. Tears streamed down my face, one after another. I didn't even have the strength to wipe them away. After 2 weeks, my condition stabilized enough for a regular ward. The reality of my situation hit me like a truck when the nurse wheeled me down for payment. That was when I truly understood what it meant to be utterly cornered. Despite Arthur's hefty neurosurgeon salary, we'd kept our finances separate since marriage. I'd taken a lower-paying job near his parents' place to be a dutiful wife, saving barely anything over the years. Arthur hadn't given me a dime. I hadn't even seen his bank cards. At the billing window, I called Arthur repeatedly, but my calls were rejected or met with silence. When someone finally picked up, it was Alara's voice. "Hey Isabel, Arthur's in the shower right now. If it's urgent, try calling back later." The fact that she could answer his phone while he was showering spoke volumes. Thank God I hadn't lost my mind and handed over all my assets to Arthur. I still had one card with $120,000, savings from the child support my parents had paid until I turned 18. Returning to my room, I retrieved the card and handed it to the cashier. She awkwardly pushed it back. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this card's declined. There's no money in the account." My heart stopped. "Impossible. Please check again," I pleaded. "All my savings are in there. I've never touched that money." She shook her head apologetically. "I'm sorry, but the account is empty." The room began to spin. Then, a voice cut through the chaos. "Use mine." I whirled around. Standing there was Julian Reed, my childhood friend, who drifted away after my parents' divorce. He slid his card across the counter, his face a mask of indifference. After paying, Julian walked away without a backward glance. Back in my room, I called the bank to trace my missing funds. "Hello, Ms. Brooks. According to our records, the entire balance was transferred 2 months ago to a Ms. Alara Thorne. Is there anything else I can help you with?" My heart sank deeper. "No, thank you," I whispered, my heart clenching painfully. Then I saw Alara's latest post. "Thanks, Arthur. It is the most thoughtful and favorite gift I've ever received." It was posted with a photo of a handbag. I checked the price. Exactly $120,000. I couldn't even afford my hospital bills. Yet Arthur used my life-saving money to buy his goddess the latest designer bag. In my anger, I hit like on Alara's post. Seconds later, Arthur called, fuming. "Isabel, Alara bought that bag with her own bonus. Why don't you earn your own awards instead of being so passive-aggressive?" Meanwhile, Alara played peacemaker with fake concern. "Don't be mad, Arthur. I'm sure Isabel didn't mean it that way. You know she's always struggled financially, so it's natural for her to feel envious. As her husband, you should be more understanding, right?" Her words seemed conciliatory, but the implication was crystal clear. Once Alara spoke, Arthur completely forgot about scolding me, and their voices drew closer, making nauseating sounds. Knowing the call was still connected, Alara feigned innocence. "Don't get the wrong idea, Isabel. Arthur and I were just joking around." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Arthur's voice drew closer. "Alara, ignore her. She's always making a scene." "You, Arthur." I cut him off, fighting back tears. "You said Alara bought that bag with her bonus. So how come it costs exactly $120,000? Arthur snapped impatiently. "So what if I bought it with that money? We're married. What's yours is mine, isn't it?" Alara won an award. As her junior colleague, shouldn't I show my support? "Stop nagging me about this." I couldn't take it anymore. That was my money. My life-saving money. All I got in response was the dial tone. The person I thought I'd grow old with had hurt me the deepest. I collapsed onto the bed, feeling dead inside. Memories of my time with Arthur flashed before my eyes as tears streamed down my face. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a security camera alert. I opened it and saw Arthur and Alara locked in an embrace, tearing off each other's clothes between passionate kisses. How disgusting. Arthur started to turn off the security camera, but Alara stopped him, pressing his hand against her chest with a seductive smile. Leave it on, baby. I love living dangerously, Alara purred. They stumbled into the bedroom together, and soon, inappropriate noises echoed through the hospital room. My blood boiled as I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. Hello? I want to report prostitution happening in my house right now. After calling the police, I contacted an old classmate who had become a lawyer. Arthur and I had been known as the perfect couple everyone envied for years. Everything changed when I attended his class reunion as his wife. That was when I discovered Arthur had been pining over his first love, Alara, all these years. His classmates jokingly called her Arthur's dream goddess. When I saw Alara, it finally clicked why he'd always tried to change my appearance and why it felt like he was looking through me at someone else. High heels, straight hair, all those dresses. Everything was modeled after his idealized version of her. I used to think his silence around me was due to our lack of common interests. After discussing the divorce agreement with my lawyer, my body finally gave in to the stress. I collapsed into bed, my exhausted body quickly falling into a deep sleep. But even in my dreams, they wouldn't leave me alone. Arthur and Alara's faces alternated in my dreams, with a lingering sense of mortal dread. The nightmare held me down, trapping me in its grasp. After what felt like forever, someone violently shook me awake. Alara's tear-swollen eyes and Arthur's rage-contorted face swam before me. I couldn't tell if I was still dreaming or finally awake, until Arthur's roar cut through my confusion. You crazy bitch! How dare you call the police? You just can't STA! Arthur screamed, yanking me off the hospital bed. The 4-needle ripped out. I collapsed weakly to the floor, blood trickling from where the needle had been. Arthur's eyes blazed red with fury, entirely indifferent to my condition. He kept screaming at me to apologize to Alara. When I remained silent, his anger exploded. He raised his hand to strike me, but in the end, I felt only the wind from his palm across my face. A hand shot out of nowhere, catching his descending palm mid-strike. In the next instant, someone's fist connected with Arthur's face. What kind of doctor are you, Arthur? What kind of person? She's still hooked up to N4. After berating Arthur, Julian turned to help me up. It was him. I should have recognized his voice earlier. He performed my surgery when Arthur went missing. After helping me back onto the bed, Julian turned his attention back to Arthur. He grabbed him by the collar and physically dragged him out of the room. Alara screamed and ran after them. The door slammed shut. I sat on the bed, hugging my knees, listening to the chaos erupting in the hallway. A moment later, a nurse came in. She put a hand to her chest, still catching her breath. I've worked here for years, but I've never seen Dr. Reed get physical with anyone before. He hit Dr. Vance so hard he couldn't even stand up. I snapped out of my daze and stared at her in shock. The nurse smiled shyly, then seemed to remember something. You probably don't know this, but on the day of your surgery, Dr. Reed was actually on vacation. When he got the call from the chief, he came straight to the hospital without hesitation. He looked so grim when he entered the operating room. She studied me curiously. Do you know Dr. Reed from somewhere? I was at a loss for words. Just then, the door to my hospital room opened. Julian walked in with a stern expression. The nurse took the hint and left. Julian sat down beside my bed and loosened his tie with a frown. Arthur just told me you're planning to divorce him? I nodded silently. The tense atmosphere around Julian eased slightly. Finally making a smart decision, he muttered, almost to himself. When I remained quiet, Julian reached into his white coat pocket and pulled out a piece of candy, holding it out to me. Here, you used to say candy always made you feel better. I stared at the candy in Julian's palm, feeling tears in my eyes. But before I could say anything, Julian stood up and walked away. Childhood memories came flooding back. Back then, Julian and I were neighbors. Whenever he felt down, I would give him a piece of carefully saved candy. Here, I would tell him, have this. Sweet things always make you feel better. But after he started dating Arthur, everything changed. Whenever he saw me buy candy, he would look at me with disdain. Aren't you too old to be eating candy? How childish, he would say. Yet later, I kept seeing Arthur's social media posts about all the candies she had so much trouble buying for Alara. I saw Alara's announcement to everyone. Best junior in the world. I couldn't help myself. I took a photo of the candy lying in my palm and posted it online. Arthur replied instantly. Some random guy bought that for you, didn't he? I took a deep breath and put my phone back on the nightstand. I wouldn't respond to him anymore. I closed my eyes and rested for less than half an hour when my phone rang. It was Arthur calling. I silenced my phone and ignored it, but he kept calling. After at least a dozen calls, he started bombarding me with text messages. Unfortunately, I was being wheeled away for a checkup by the nurse and was utterly unaware of all this. After the checkup, the nurse wheeled me back to my room, with Julian carefully explaining my condition. However, as soon as we arrived at the door of my room, Arthur, who had just been kicked out not long ago, showed up again. The moment he saw me, he stormed over, furious. Arthur shoved the nurse aside and glared at me. Well, Isabel. Now I know why you suddenly went crazy and wanted a divorce. You've found yourself a new man. I almost forgot. Julian is your childhood sweetheart that you've been obsessed with all these years. A married woman. Canoodling with another man in public. Have you no shame? I looked at Arthur. He was like a stranger to me. I had wanted to save face for him and Alara, but now it seemed they didn't need it. I walked towards my room without saying a word. Arthur wanted to continue his harassment, but Julian stopped him. I grabbed my phone and returned to the doorway of my room. In full view of the patients and their families coming and going, I clicked on that disgusting video. In an instant, 2 naked bodies appeared on the screen, tangled together. Their disgusting moans echoed through the hallway. I looked at Arthur, who was nearly going insane with rage, and raised my voice. Everyone can see now who the real shameless one is. Arthur roared and lunged forward, trying to grab my phone. I gave a cold laugh. You had sex with Alara in my house, in my bed, and then you tried to blame me? Well, why don't we let everyone enjoy this little performance of yours? Isabel, you're going too far, Arthur bellowed. They had hurt me again and again, even almost taking my life. And now they had the nerve to say I was going too far? How ridiculous. Either we get divorced, or I'll play this video in court. Arthur stared at me in disbelief. Isabel, what happened to you? You've become so vicious. Anyone would become vicious after nearly being killed by the person they loved most. Standing amid the murmuring crowd, I forced myself to stay upright and look him straight. Let's get divorced, Arthur. We both know Alara's the one you've always loved. Arthur, cursing at me seconds ago, suddenly reached for my hand. Thankfully, Julian was quick to react, swatting Arthur's hand away. Arthur shot Julian a hateful glare before turning back to me with an exaggerated look of sorrow. In the noisy hospital corridor, Arthur gazed at me with what seemed like endless love. Please don't divorce me, Isabel. I admit I made a terrible mistake, but you're the only one I've ever truly loved. Please, don't leave me. His eyes held such intensity, like on our wedding day when he'd tearfully vowed to spend the rest of his life with me. I remembered those early years when he was establishing himself at the hospital. He barely slept 4 or 5 hours a night, let alone had time for me or his parents. To help him focus on his career, I'd quit my high-paying job without hesitation to take care of his parents full-time. But now, I noticed the fresh hickey on his collarbone. I let out a bitter laugh. Those sweet memories of our happiness now made me sick to my stomach. Stop lying to yourself, Arthur. You never loved me, maybe not even from the start. The divorce papers are ready. Either you sign them or I'll file with the court. Your choice. As I finished speaking, I spotted Alara hovering behind Arthur. She put on an act like she was about to die of shame, sobbing theatrically towards Arthur. I'm so sorry, Arthur, she wailed, tears streaming down her face. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have let myself fall for you. Shouldn't have let myself get so close. I never meant to hurt your family. Then, she turned to me, her face a mask of sorrow. I'm so sorry, Isabel. I never meant to break up your marriage, never meant to hurt you. I'm so sorry. I'll leave Arthur. I'll get out of your lives, and I'll never appear in front of him again. With that, Alara covered her face and turned to leave. Alara! Arthur, wholly taken in by her performance, grabbed her arm and pulled her into an embrace, right there in front of everyone. His eyes were bloodshot as he looked at me and said, each word dripping with anger, "Fine, we're getting a divorce." Arthur hastily signed the divorce papers, but he didn't see the triumphant, venomous look Alara shot me as he signed. Once he was done, Arthur and Alara walked away, hand in hand. Watching their retreating figures, I felt a surge of relief. Maybe before the surgery, I would have been heartbroken, devastated even. But now, all I felt was an overwhelming sense of liberation. Finally, I was free of this jerk. Suddenly, a large hand waved in front of my face, followed by Julian's disgruntled voice. Still watching? Don't tell me you're having second thoughts about this loser. I stared at him momentarily, watching his expression grow increasingly uncomfortable, before bursting into laughter. Playfully flicked him on the forehead like I used to when we were kids. Second thoughts? I'm overjoyed. Why would I regret it? Jules, cut the crap. Whenever he pissed me off as a kid, I'd call him that on purpose. You? Called out by his nickname, Julian glared at me, his cheeks flushed, while the nurse struggled to stifle a laugh. He turned and left without another word. I yawned, exhausted from the past few days. Finally, I could get a decent night's sleep. The next day, I saw 2 new posts on Alara's social media. Waited so long for you. Congrats to myself. My newly developed miracle drug is finally going into production. She seemed to have it all. Love and career success served on a silver platter. But seriously, the love life I could stomach, but her career achievements? Please. During Julian's rounds, I asked him about the proper channels for reporting academic fraud. He immediately caught on to who I was planning to report. You want to report Alara? He was still as sharp as ever, just as we were kids. Took all the fun out of it. I frowned. What? Is there a problem? Julian shrugged. Nah. It's your right to report whoever you want. I rolled my eyes in annoyance. As he finished his routine rounds before leaving, Julian added, If you need any help, just let me know. I carefully memorized the reporting procedure he'd explained and thanked him. Right, thanks. I didn't see Arthur again until the day after the cooling-off period had passed when I was at the courthouse. And, of course, Alara was there with him, decked out in designer clothes and carrying a luxury handbag. Oh, and they were even wearing matching outfits. How nauseating. After getting the divorce certificate, we walked outside. Alara hung onto Arthur's arm, brazenly resting her head on his shoulder. Isabel, why do you still look so pale? Is it because you haven't recovered? Or are you missing Arthur again? Under the sunlight, the necklace on her neck caught my eye with a flash. I looked closer and found out that it was mine. Without warning, I reached out and yanked the necklace off Alara's neck. Sure enough, my initials were engraved on the pendant, which was Arthur's birthday gift. A few months ago, this necklace had suddenly disappeared. I remember how Arthur had blown up at me then, saying I was careless my whole life, losing such an expensive necklace just like that. I had been so heartbroken and full of guilt back then that he'd berated me again and again for crying over it. All this time, the necklace had changed owners. I looked at Alara as she clutched her neck in distress, then sneered. What are you? Some garbage collector? Always picking up other people's discarded trash? Men? Jewelry? Anything filthy and unwanted. Alara ignored my mockery and lunged for the necklace, throwing a nasty jab at it. Discarded. Don't flatter yourself. Arthur would never want a woman like you. You're poor, ugly, and about as exciting in bed as a starfish. As Alara was about to grab the necklace, I deliberately let it slip through my fingers, making a sharp clink as it hit the floor. Alara shot me a furious glare, but her expression transformed into a smug smile within seconds. Oh, Isabel, are you just jealous because Arthur bought me a huge diamond ring for the proposal? She taunted. She reached into her purse and shoved a gold-embossed invitation into my hands. I should really thank you, you know. If you hadn't volunteered as my test subject and ended up on the operating table, my new drug wouldn't have been approved so quickly. This is the invitation to my drug launch celebration. You have to come. The invitation might have said, celebration, but engagement was printed on it. She was planning to make it a double celebration. I couldn't help but smirk at the phrase perfect match, written inside the invitation. More like perfect partners in crime, I thought to myself, probably thinking she had successfully gotten under my skin. Alara put on her victory pose and planted a deliberate kiss on Arthur's cheek. Come on, Arthur, let's get out of here, she purred. Arthur remained utterly silent throughout the exchange, even as Alara dragged him away. After they left, I double-checked the date of the celebration party. Thinking about the evidence I had already submitted to the authorities, I couldn't suppress a small smile. It would be their perfect engagement gift. Even after our divorce, Arthur's mother, Eleanor Vance, kept calling me, and when I didn't answer, she would bombard me with text messages just like her son used to do. She was pushing me to take care of Robert Vance, Arthur's father, who had recently become comatose after a car accident. What kind of wife are you? You haven't come to take care of us for so long. It's bad enough that you couldn't give us a grandchild in all those years of marriage, and now you won't ever help us. Should I tell my son to divorce you and find someone else? The house hasn't been cleaned in ages. Get over here right now, or you'll regret it. I had devoted years to being a dutiful daughter to them, but they had always treated me no better than a hired maid. I had put up with all of this before because I loved Arthur, but this time I fired back with a text of my own. I'm already divorced from your son, and he's found you a new wife. Stop harassing me, or I'll call the police. After sending that message, I ignored Eleanor's harassment and went to the carrier store for a new phone number. In a way, it was my final goodbye to the past. Thanks to Julian's recommendation, I landed a job at an insurance company that paid much better than my previous clerical position despite the heavier workload. Little did I know I would run into Arthur again less than a week after starting. He showed up at the insurance company out of nowhere. He looked completely different from his usual self in appearance and demeanor. I must have been staring at Arthur too long because my coworker couldn't help but comment. Don't let his clean-cut appearance fool you. He's probably a wolf in sheep's clothing, my coworker warned. I turned to my coworker with a puzzled look. Around this time last year, they continued, he came in to take out an accidental death policy for his ex-wife. Care to guess whose name he put down as the beneficiary? The answer was painfully obvious. My mind flashed back to when he secretly switched my medication and insisted that Alara perform my surgery. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Looking back now, only he knew whether it was indeed for Alara's sake or to collect the insurance money after my early demise. My colleague continued, thank God his ex-wife was lucky enough to divorce him. I heard he's here today to get accident insurance for his current wife, and I bet he'll put himself down as the beneficiary again. My colleague shook her head in disgust and said, this guy is nothing but a predator. During our gossip, the door to the meeting room where Arthur had entered suddenly swung open. The department manager poked his head out and beckoned to me. Hey newbie, take these documents and make some copies, he instructed. Terrified that Arthur might spot me, I kept my head down, letting my hair shield my face as I quickly grabbed the stack of papers and rushed toward the copy room. Standing in the copy room, I began examining the documents in my hands. What I discovered left me stunned. It wasn't just me, and it wasn't just Alara. Arthur had also taken out substantial accident insurance policies on his parents, and the payout amounts for each person were astronomical. And the worst part was that neither I nor the other insured individuals knew what he'd done behind our backs. Thankfully, our divorce had already invalidated my portion of the insurance policy. In a flash of realization, I thought about Robert, who had become a vegetative patient after the car accident, and I remembered the poorly concealed disappointment on Arthur's face when he learned about Robert's condition. What kind of person would even scheme against their parents? Yet he kept claiming that he loved Alara. The truth was that money was his only true love. After taking photos of all the documents, I returned to the office with the photocopies. But as soon as I pushed open the door, I heard Arthur's sarcastic tone. You see, it doesn't matter if they're career women or housewives. They all fall apart without a man. Take my current wife, for example. She's pretty well off, but she's always doing these extreme sports. Who knows? She might end up getting herself killed one of these days. Arthur was lounging on the couch, chatting casually with the manager. While they were deeply engaged in their conversation, I placed the documents on the desk behind Arthur and quietly slipped out of the office. Just before the door closed, I heard Arthur speaking with disgust and disappointment. You know what's crazy? My ex-wife turned out to be one tough cookie. She managed to survive and walk out of the ICU, completely wasting all that insurance money I'd been counting on. His tone suddenly shifted to satisfaction as he continued. At least her mind was gone enough that she didn't notice when I cleaned out her bank accounts. It was only $100 grand or so. But hey, better than nothing. I was about to stop my phone's recording when I captured the most crucial statement of all. At that exact moment, Alara sent me a message. Isabel, don't forget about the celebration and engagement party this Sunday. You have to come. I closed the office door behind me. I quickly responded to Alara. I'll be there on time. Saturday arrived, and I showed up at the hotel venue right on schedule. Alara, decked out in designer brands from head to toe, came running over with joy plastered all over her face. She grabbed my arm affectionately and started chatting with fake warmth. Isabel, I'm so glad you made it. I've been waiting forever for you to show up. I suppressed a laugh as I gently removed her hand from my arm. She showed off her diamond ring, necklace, earrings, and diamond bracelet without caring about my reaction. She had already posted these accessories countless times on social media. While talking, she glanced at the person behind me and smiled disdainfully. Look, Isabel, I get that Arthur dumped you, but that's no reason to let yourself go. You're not exactly a looker. But couldn't you at least find someone your age? I ignored her jab and reminded her. Shouldn't you head inside? The engagement ceremony is about to start. Alara muttered under her breath. Such a phony. Today wasn't just about her engagement. It was also a celebration of her new drug launch, and many big names from the medical field had shown up, so she couldn't waste too much time antagonizing me. Alara shot me one last dirty look before walking away, immediately surrounded by people eager to discuss her breakthrough drug. Arthur finally made his grand entrance. He didn't come empty-handed. He brought Alara another gift. It was another luxury designer bag from the latest collection. Congratulations on achieving your dream, baby. I turned to the person behind me and asked, can you tell if these items are genuine from here? He adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. Something seems off, but I can't tell if it's just the distance playing tricks on my eyes. I fell silent, watching the crowded ballroom as guests mingled and clinked glasses. Before long, I spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Julian waved at me from across the room and strode with purposeful steps, and the moment he reached my side, he let out a sigh and loosened his tie with noticeable relief. God, I hate these stuffy events. Everyone here is more fake than department store mannequins, he complained. I let out a small laugh and asked, if you hate it so much, why did you even come? Julian glanced down at me with a careful expression, trying to sound casual. Arthur mentioned you'd received an invitation. The implication was clear. He had come specifically for me. Surprised by this revelation, I chose not to pursue that topic. Our interaction caught Arthur's attention, and he made his way directly toward us with a facade of politeness. "How have you been? Are you feeling any better these days?" he asked with artificial concern. I gave him a distant smile and replied, "No need to pretend you care, Mr. Vance." Arthur's expression stiffened, but he attempted to save face. "Come on, Isabel. Just because we're divorced doesn't mean we can't be friends. Do you really need to keep such rigid boundaries?" I maintained my fake smile and said, "Sorry, but I'm a bit of a clean freak. I don't make friends with trash." Given the public setting, Arthur couldn't exactly throw a fit. Still, his expression was anything but pleasant. But in the blink of an eye, he seemed to recover his composure and asked with raised eyebrows, "Don't tell me you're still hung up on me, and all this hostility is just to get my attention?" Look at him, how utterly ordinary, yet so breathtakingly confident. Julian suddenly said, "So in Dr. Vance's eyes, insulting you means liking you? Then you must have quite a few admirers." His comment made me burst out laughing. Since that video was played in public, people have been gossiping about Arthur. Arthur stormed off while cursing under her breath after failing to get me away. The celebration party began with Alara taking the stage to deliver a heartfelt speech. Behind her, a large screen displayed a montage of her research accomplishments over the years, emphasizing her hard work and dedication. However, the mood suddenly shifted at the end of the presentation. The security footage from my house showing Arthur tampering with my medication, followed by my being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance due to complications from Alara's experimental drug, appeared unexpectedly in the video. The footage played without any warning. The video concluded with several interviews where the speakers' faces were pixelated. On the day of Ms. Brooks's surgery, Dr. Vance unauthorized allowed Dr. Thorne to perform the operation, which resulted in the patient going into cardiac arrest during the procedure. Yes, I can confirm that Dr. Vance claimed the surgery was successful, but within 2 hours, Ms. Brooks had to be rushed back into surgery due to a brain hemorrhage. Not only did Dr. Vance refuse to take responsibility, but he and Dr. Thorne went on vacation together. People who show such disregard for human life don't deserve to be doctors. The failed experimental drug and the deliberate medical malpractice instantly turned the two of them into the center of everyone's attention. Both of them turned their attention to me. Arthur screamed hysterically, "It's her! She's just bitter about being dumped. So she made this fake video to frame us." I raised an eyebrow and said, "Still trying to turn this around on me? Well, I've got another surprise for you. Look at how old she is, and she still demanded a complete set of diamond jewelry before agreeing to marry me. She would throw a fit if I didn't buy it, always pestering me for designer bags. Where was I supposed to get that kind of money? I had no choice but to buy her knockoffs. She's such an idiot, actually believing I was wrapped around her finger and taking everything I said at face value." This recording captured Arthur's last 2 sentences from that day. I turned my head to look at Alara when I played the recording. Gone was her confidence. Her face now showed humiliation and rage. The luxury bag she was still clutching was immediately called a fake. This new model hasn't even been released yet. Someone like Arthur couldn't possibly get her hands on an authentic one. The person who spoke up was the wife of a researcher from Alara's laboratory. She happened to work as a sales associate at a luxury boutique. As soon as she finished speaking, the large screen played footage of that researcher's intimate encounter with Alara. The researcher's wife stormed forward and slapped Alara hard across the face. "You slut!" she screamed. Alara stood there in shock from the slap. Arthur panicked, desperately defending himself under everyone's mocking stares, as he swore he'd never knowingly purchased counterfeit goods. I snatched the bag from Alara's hand and handed it to the authentication expert I'd brought along. After a thorough examination, the expert made his definitive assessment. "It's fake and not even a high-quality replica," he declared with absolute certainty. "I bought it from an authorized dealer." Arthur exploded, his face red with anger. "They must have scammed me too." While Alara was still in shock, I grabbed the diamond bracelet from her wrist and rubbed it with a fork, instantly causing the fake diamonds to fall off. Alara stared at the scene with her mouth agape. In the next second, she let out a piercing scream and lunged at Arthur. But before she could do anything, Arthur shoved her away. As chaos erupted at the scene, uniformed police officers arrived with arrest warrants. I kept my eyes fixed on Alara and said with icy composure, "You didn't seriously think drugging me without my consent was legal, did you?" While I was still in the hospital with Julian's help, I had the lab doctors extract my blood samples, which revealed traces of those drugs. This evidence became the crucial piece we needed to arrest Alara. When the police grabbed Alara, Arthur's face turned ghostly pale, and she tried to make a run for it. But the quick-acting officers managed to restrain her just in time. As I watched her being pinned to the ground for resisting arrest, I looked down at her with a cold smirk. Without your help, she couldn't have used me as a lab rat. Did you really think you'd get away with it? Arthur roared in rage. You bitch! You fucking bitch! I fixed her with an icy stare. The police finally led both of them away. With the dust settled, Julian and I went out for a celebratory dinner with a few glasses of wine. We walked out of the restaurant together. We stood side by side on the curb, waiting for our ride. Suddenly, Julian's voice broke the silence, his tone playfully teasing. So what do you think now? Isn't a childhood friend better than some random guy who dropped into your life? I turned to look at him in surprise, wondering what he was getting at. Julian cleared his throat awkwardly and averted his gaze, seeming nervous as he spoke. Would you consider giving your childhood friend a chance? Under the streetlight, I noticed Julian's ears turning bright red. My ride pulled up and I slid into the back seat. Just before the car started moving, I rolled down the window and, watching Julian's crestfallen expression, softly said, Well, you better step up your game then, childhood friend. Julian's face lit up instantly, but before he could respond, I signaled the driver to go. In the rearview mirror, I saw Julian, who always prided himself on being Mr. Cool, jumping up and down like an excited puppy. 2 years later, I married Julian in an extravagantly romantic ceremony that exceeded all my expectations. The day we returned from our honeymoon, I received news of Arthur's release from prison. He had nothing left. As soon as he was convicted, I'd petitioned the court for an asset investigation. Apart from his legitimate salary, his illegal income had been frozen and seized. And even his legal income had long since been squandered by his parents during his 2 years in prison. With no chance of returning to the hospital, he scraped by in some dingy clinic, earning a pittance. Another year passed and Alara was released. Thanks to my discreet intervention, she tracked down Arthur and became an incessant presence in his life. What had once been mutual attraction transformed into a toxic relationship filled with mutual loathing. In a twisted turn of events, Arthur, who had taken out substantial life insurance policies for his parents and Alara, ended up being the first to meet his demise. Alara was immediately arrested and charged with murder, as she had been the one to pull the trigger. Eleanor, whose health had been steadily deteriorating over the past 3 years, followed her son to the grave after witnessing his tragic end. Robert was left alone in his vegetative state, forgotten and neglected by everyone. The destruction of their family served as the ultimate punishment for all their misdeeds. I cut my losses at the right time, and now I enjoy a blissful marriage and a flourishing career. And I firmly believe my happiness and success will continue for all the days to come.